right, good morning. Good morning. Okay, welcome to CCAC and to the Allegheny campus. We are extremely excited this morning to be the host of what we believe will be an awe-inspiring program. Let me begin by acknowledging a couple of folks who have spent tireless hours in preparing, planning, and developing this program today. I believe you'll find it an extremely rewarding program. Mr. Malik Vincent, Alicia Carter, and the MMI leads. I'm just going to ask them if they're not standing, just to stand or wave your hands to be acknowledged. So today it will pretty much be a session that's all about you. And the opportunity that you have today, we're going to try to align it with what I believe to be an exciting buzz that's occurring at the campus within the city of Pittsburgh. As you know, you may have heard that Amazon is considering Pittsburgh as one of the cities of choice. There's constant information out there about job opportunities in the next 5 to 10 years in a wide variety of fields. The question that I have for you, are you prepared to be competitive, to be able to overcome the multiple barriers and, in essence, position yourself to get some of these positions? In essence, you are the future for Pittsburgh. Today's guest speaker is a very dynamic young man who will talk to you very directly about barriers. We'll talk to you about his story, and he has a very impressive story in terms of how he has overcome various barriers. And I'm going to ask you that today, as you sit, listen, and learn, also question, have questions, and more importantly, network. You want to be able to walk away today with a lot of information, but you also want to walk away feeling inspired. And I believe the program today will give you that opportunity. So I will end by introducing one of our student leaders, and I always draw a blank when I'm trying to remember his name, but Mr. Jalen Clark is one of our impressive students who actually is getting ready to transfer to Howard University. A young man who has maximized on all of the opportunities here at the Community College of Allegheny County. So it's my hope that you will not only be inspired by Mr. Clark and the other student speakers, but also our guest speakers. So again, welcome to the Community College of Allegheny County. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause for Dr. Walters. So first things first, good morning, everybody. That was a crappy good morning. I said good morning, everybody. Thank you, because I know y'all be louder like that in the hall. So when I speak, I like a response, all right? All right? All right. Again, my name is Jalen Clark. I just recently graduated last semester with an associate's in business management, so I'll be walking here in a couple of months. And I'm also, like I said, looking forward to transfer to Howard University to continue my business degree. I've been at CCAC since January of 2016. I came here and pretty much maximized my time. I'm a part of MMI. I'm a part of a lot of different clubs, but the main reason why I'm here right now is because of the MenOfMerit. I built a lot of good relationships with the leads, a lot of brothers that I didn't know that I have a relationship with them, and it's a bond that's going to last a lifetime. So I want you guys to come here, really immerse yourselves, and really take in to what all the speakers and what I'm and everyone here is going to be talking to you guys about. Thank you guys for coming, and now we are going to have Sahara Mahina come up and give you her little spiel. Sahara.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I would like to start off by thanking Dr. Walters and all the college administrators that took time out of their day to come talk to us. My name is Sahara Mahina. I'm currently pursuing a double major in computer information systems and mathematics and sciences. Today, I'm coming on behalf of the Women on a Mission organization on campus. Through Women on a Mission, I was able to develop various leadership skills and also develop soft skills that are very important. Soft skills such as emotional intelligence and professional etiquette. Thank you for your time, and I really hope you enjoy the wonderful program planned for you all today.
I want to take this time to thank all of the guest attendees, the MMI campus leads, and the college-wide representation out there on the college-wide stream right now, and thank you for participating in this event. And conceptualizing this event, I thought about the time where I was called to volunteer with the Pittsburgh Black Media Federation's Frank Urban Journalism Workshop to push forth young men and young women like myself at a certain point in time towards the field of journalism as a man of color. There, I met a young man, very tall in stature, very charming, very articulate, and very impactful in my life. And I wanted to call him and speak to you all and share his experiences and the things that he has endured and the things that he has dealt with in order to come to his own stardom and his own notoriety and his own self. And that gentleman is Mr. Keith Reed, the man who's going to grace this podium and give a speech to all of you all today. So without further ado, I want to introduce my friend, one of my mentors, and a great guy and a great professional, Mr. Keith Reed.
All right, I wanted to make sure that this mic was off and this one was on. First of all, I want to thank everybody for inviting me here. I want to thank Malik for that introduction. As a matter of fact, and I was sitting there going over the notes that I had for speaking to you, and I heard him say he was introducing somebody, and he gave all these superlatives, and he talked real, he made the person who was coming up here to speak sound a lot bigger than I am, right? So I'm wondering who he was actually talking about. I think I might have to pay him a little bit later for giving me that kind of introduction, but I appreciate it. I came here, right? And I wrote some notes, had a little spiel prepared, a speech that I wanted to give to everybody, but I wasn't entirely sure how I wanted to give that information to a group of high school students. And I walked in the room, and I saw a guy standing right here in the front of at the front of the stage by the name of Dion Dupree, who brought, I understand, a few of you here from Perry. And I went to high school with that guy. So I knew him as not Mr. Dion Dupree, I knew him as Dookie. And I ain't lying, to embarrass him, but that was Dookie. In the hood, he was Dookie. And they didn't call me Keith Reed. Nobody called me Mr., they called me 6'8". Everybody went by their nickname in the neighborhood. So people knew me, but they didn't know Keith Reed, and they didn't know the person standing at this podium, just like you didn't know Dion Dupree, and you didn't know the guy who's in your school and who helps you with things and who can give you advice. See, we knew different people back then. And when I saw him, I thought about, do I want to give the speech that's on the paper, or do I want to talk to people person to person, and do I want to talk to people who might be going through some of the same things that we went through? See, I'm a believer in the idea that history repeats itself, and it's not always going to look the same for your generation as it would for my generation. It's not always going to look the same for students today as it would have looked for us when I graduated back in, I ain't going to say the year, not all that old, but I ain't going to say the year because y'all going to feel like I'm too old to be talking to you. But when we graduated, there were a lot of things that were going on in the city of Pittsburgh. See, today we talk about this being a city where Amazon, one of the biggest companies in the country, one of the biggest companies in the world, is thinking about relocating to Pittsburgh and what that means. And we hear about billions of dollars worth of investment being made in a city that lots of times many of us don't necessarily feel connected to because we don't see the opportunity for us to leave the neighborhood that we live in to have access to jobs in a place like Amazon, at a company like that, at a place like ESPN, where I worked as a commentator and as a senior editor for one of the largest magazines in the world. We don't feel connected to a city where over and over and over again we see investments being made and we see people getting hired and we see people getting opportunities, but we don't understand how we can go from a student sitting in a classroom at Perry, or a kid who gets up every morning and walks from the top of Lincoln Avenue all the way down to North Mertland Avenue and walks all the way back up at the end of the day to go to Westinghouse and graduate. So a lot of times what we see in our own neighborhoods, in our own communities, in our own high schools are a completely different story from the ones that we need to be connected to in order to get access to those opportunities. If you were to have a conversation, and I hope some of you have had the opportunity to have a conversation with Dookie, but if you've never had a conversation with him, or if you've never had the opportunity to have a conversation with somebody who's come before you, who's been in the position that you've been in, and really talk to that person, you might not know that the people that you see standing before you who may have on suits and ties, who may travel, who may have lofty positions and lofty titles, who you may call Mr. or Doctor, or have a comma after their name with some letters that you don't understand what they are, you might not know that that's a person who had to deal with the same kinds of stress and the same kinds of situations that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I want to not talk to you from this piece of paper, but I want to talk to you from my heart, because I want you to understand that the things that you might see every day, some of the things that you might see that you feel like are the worst, some of the things that you might feel like you don't understand or that you can't get past, that those are only bumps in the road. That those are things that you can actually transcend to get to wherever it is that you want to get to in life, if you're able to stay focused and if you're able to understand that when it feels like failure, when it feels impossible, when it feels more difficult than you have the ability or the emotional aptitude to be able to wrap your mind around, those are the places that are actually building you in your character in ways that are going to take you to where you really need to be. When Malik called me and said, I want you to come over to CCAC and talk to some students, I said, okay, I can do that. What you want me to talk about? Because I can talk all day, but what you want me to talk about that's going to be valuable? And he said, I want you to come over and I want you to talk about education. And I said, I can talk about education. I have a college degree. I've traveled a lot. I've seen a lot. I'm an educated person, right? But then I said, if I come and I talk about education and I stand in front of you for 20 minutes and I just drill into your head how important it is to sit in the classroom and bring home good grades, number one, that's stuff that you already heard before. Number two, I got two sons. One of them's a senior in high school right now, and he don't want to hear that from me either. So I don't want to stand here and bore you. I want to give you something that you can actually pay attention to and be willing to hear. So I said, you know what? Instead of talking about just education and drilling into you how important it is to be educated, which I think you all probably already know, I want to talk to you about what's real in life. What's real in life is walking into a room and seeing somebody that you haven't seen in at least 15 or 20 years and still having a connection to that person and still being able to reminisce. And I said, what should I say to your students? And he said, you know what? You should talk to them about how we got to where we got and what we went through. So let me tell you about not the Pittsburgh that existed that exists today, where Amazon is coming and they're talking about hiring a lot of people. Let me talk to you about what Pittsburgh was like if you lived in Homewood, or on the Hill, or in Hazelwood, or in Manchester, or on the North Side, or whatever part of the city that you came from, if you were there when we were in high school, and I guarantee that you'll relate to some things. There was a day when we all got up and went to school. It was 1993 or 4, I think, and there was a basketball game after school. So we all went to the game, and everybody dispersed, went back home to the neighborhood, and when we came back to school the next morning, we found out that 3, not 1, 3 of our classmates had been shot. One of them was a star on our football team, was shot point blank range in the chest with a 12-gauge shotgun. He lived. Let me say that to you one more time. We got up and we went to school. And somebody who we saw every day, who we hung out with, who was our friend, who we just went to his basketball game with, when we came back to school the next day, he had been shot in the chest, just about this distance where I'm standing looking at you, with a 12-gauge shotgun. He lived. He told me after it happened, after he was in the hospital for months, after he went to rehab to relearn how to do basic things like walk, that he thought he didn't actually get hit. Because when you get shot, you go into shock. Your body starts telling you things that make you not able to focus on what actually happened to you. And he didn't realize he was hit for however long, a couple of seconds. And the last thing he remembered was being on the ground and looking up at the person who had shot him and trying to keep his eyes open, but not being able to. And his eyes closed, and he thought that was going to be the last thing he saw. The same night, 2 other people, not walking distance from my house, went to the same high school, also got shot. Same night. One of them shot back of the head, died instantly. Other one was shot in the neck and lived. Came back to tell the story. Still alive today, fortunately. But what is the point in me talking to you about tragedy, about violence, about something that happened 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago now, when I'm supposed to be here to talk to you about education? Well, the point of me saying that to you is there are going to be difficult times and difficult circumstances and things that are inexplicable to you. There are going to be tragedies. There are going to be things that happen in your life that you cannot explain, and that any adult who you respect, if they're honest, won't be able to explain to you. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be death. There's going to be, unfortunately, violence. It's interesting to me that we live today in a world where people are now talking about gun control because we saw people get shot in a classroom down in Florida last week. And students, many died, and some of them were shot and lived to tell the story. But it sparked this whole conversation, and we're saying, what are we going to do about guns in the country? What are we going to do to keep people from getting hold of an AR-15 or some other weapon like that so they can't come and shoot up a school? And I think that's a good conversation for us to be having. But the problem that I have with the conversation is I lived through that week in and week out, day in and day out, for years, right here in this city where you all go to school and where a lot of you may be seeing some of the same things today. Nobody was having those conversations when it was happening at Westinghouse. Nobody was having that conversation when I couldn't even count the number of funerals that I went to when I was in high school. We weren't concerned about the availability of weapons in the way that we are today when it was happening only in certain places. And the reality is that for a lot of you, there's nothing that you're going to be able to do about those things right now. You can't snap your fingers and change the circumstances that you're in. But what you can do is you can prepare yourself, not just through education, but through preparing your character to be resilient and to be able to get over those things. See, in 1992 and 1993, when I was watching people get shot and make bad decisions, because these things don't just happen, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, everybody who this happened to was some unfortunate soul who was innocent and just happened to get hit. That's not always the case. Some of them was out there making bad decisions, and sometimes you make bad decisions that you can't come back from. That's real. The other reality is that there are going to be times that you make bad decisions. There's going to be times when you do something that feels like failure. There's going to be times that you do things that you can recover from, but the only way that you can recover from it is to be prepared. There's a saying that I love, that I try to live by. And the saying is this, that luck equals is when preparation meets opportunity, right? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. In other words, I wasn't just lucky to be able to go and work at ESPN. I wasn't just lucky to have the career that I've had. I wasn't just lucky. It was a process of preparing yourself for the opportunities that you're going to see as you get older and as you go through life. And those opportunities are going to be there all the time. Around every corner, there's going to be an opportunity for you to make a decision to go in the right way or to go in the wrong way. It's going to be an opportunity in every single year of your life, almost every day of your life, for you to make a small decision or a big decision that has some impact on you way down the road. The difference between whether that decision that you make represents, quote unquote, good luck for you and something that happens to your benefit, or bad luck or something that happens to your detriment, is how prepared you are when the time comes that opportunity presents itself. Let me give you an example, and I'm not going to talk too long because I want to actually have a conversation with you and give you the opportunity to ask me questions if you'd like. But there was, let me take a step back. When we got out of high school, graduated in 1995, I went on to college. I went to a school called Coppin State University. It's in Baltimore. I graduated in the year 2000. I took my first job working as a newspaper reporter at a business newspaper. And I started learning about how business worked in the world. Next opportunity that I got was to go to a paper called the Boston Globe, which is one of the biggest and most well-respected media entities, not just in the country, but in the world. I was 26 years old. And when I got there, I was the youngest person that worked in this particular section of the newspaper that I worked for. When I got there, I was doing all right. I was making a little bit of money. I was okay. I was living in Boston. I was having fun. And then somebody came along and said, we're changing the department around, and I got a new boss. And me and this boss didn't particularly get along. Like, you might not get along with a parent or a teacher or whoever else. We didn't particularly get along. So now I got to work up under somebody who I don't really like. And we didn't get along that much. Okay. So she came to me and said, well, we're going to change your assignment from what you have been doing that you like to something completely different that you don't like, which is called being a general assignment reporter. Basically, it means that they can send you out to do any and everything that they want you to do. And she thought that what she was doing was giving me a demotion, okay? What she was actually doing was presenting the opportunity for me to go out and find the next big thing for myself. I said, okay, if I'm gonna be a general assignment reporter, then I can go out and do whatever I want. I don't have to be stuck assigned just writing and talking about one thing. So I said, I like sports. I'm gonna go out and talk about sports. And that, since I already had the background of learning and talking about business, I'm going to go out and I'm going to talk about and write about the business of sports. Well, that happened to be in Boston in the same year that the Boston Celtics were making a trade for Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen to bring them in. That brought in the Big Three era, that brought the Boston Celtics the first championship that they had had in 20 years. It happened to be at the time that the New England Patriots were building a championship team. And I can't stand the Patriots, but it was an opportunity for me. I can't stand them. I can't stand them as a fan. But at 26 years old, when somebody thinks they're giving you a demotion, but you've been so prepared that you can take the demotion and flip it into the opportunity because you know so much about business that you can get a meeting to go sit down with Robert Kraft, the billionaire who owns the New England Patriots, and turn that into an entire beat, or at a newspaper we call a beat, which is what you write about on a day-to-day basis. So now I spend all my time with athletes, with team owners, with the people who make money from sports. And long story short, that experience of somebody trying to impact me negatively because I was prepared to take that negative and turn it into an opportunity, turned into one of the greatest professional experiences that I ever had, because in a few years, I was getting a call from ESPN saying, you should come here and run our coverage of the business of sports at the biggest, most prestigious sports network, not just in the United States, not just in New York, but in the world. That's preparation meeting opportunity. That's preparation just in general. That's being prepared for when something happens that you think is bad, when somebody's trying to take something away from you, that's taking a negative and turning it into a positive. That's the thing that you have to do by way of your education and by way of building your character, because I could have folded up and said, I can't believe this happened. I don't want to do this no more. This is too hard. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to work for this person. They get on my nerves. I don't want to do what my mother told me to do. She getting on my nerves. I don't feel like doing this homework that the teacher gave me. Why am I even being bothered with this? The things that happen to you in your life that can work to your detriment, if you're prepared for them and if you have the kind of character that you should, you can always turn those things into positives. I'm going to tell one more story that takes that analogy a little bit deeper, and then I'm going to end and I'll let you ask any questions and we can open up for conversation. So I thought, having made it from being a little boy in what used to be the projects up on Burroughs Street, that's where I was born, where Burroughs didn't used to look like it look now, where they tried to make it look nice. When I was in Burroughs, y'all, who saw New Jack City? Who remembers that movie? I know it's old to y'all, but some few of y'all seen it. Y'all know that when they in the movie, the drug dealers in the movie, they go and they take over a whole apartment complex and turn it into their little trap. That's what the movie's about. See, that was my Burroughs Street. In 82, 83, 86, that's what it looked like. It wasn't the stuff that they tore down and then built something that kind of sort of looked nice. Mine was just all rows and rows and rows of brick buildings that somebody might be getting high in the hallway when you walked in, somebody might not. Somebody might catch their apartment on fire and you got run out the building, somebody might not. Taking that experience of having gone from that little kid to a little kid who had to run around Homewood and be worried about whether or not I was safe getting to or from Westinghouse every day, to getting my first opportunity, to getting my second opportunity, to having people trying to knock you down along the way, to being at one of the best places that you could possibly work. And I got happy. Like, how many of y'all, if y'all woke up tomorrow morning and you had a 6-figure salary and you could literally snap your fingers and make anything happen that you wanted to happen, would be happy? Raise your hand if that sounds good to you. If you knew that from where you were right now, if you woke up one day with making a 6-figure salary and could say, you know what, I want to go to the All-Star game, and so I'm going to get the job to pay for it. And when I come back, I'm going to take and make the magazine, make an entire magazine that millions of people are going to read into, make this experience into a story. That was my life. That was my life. That was something that I created. So I was real proud of myself. Let me tell you something else about myself that this cat probably knows too. I could be a little bit arrogant, a little bit if you let me. just a little bit full of myself if you let me, right? So at that point, man, I'm like, you can't tell me nothing. You can't tell me nothing. There was a guy who I worked with who I respected a whole lot when I was younger, in my 20s. And by the time I was in my mid-30s, when I was working at ESPN, I saw him at a conference. And he said to me, man, I remember, I'm going to use improper language. I think we all right in here. He said, I remember when you didn't know shit. And you are one of the top editors in the country now. He said, I'm impressed, man. And that, I didn't take the opportunity when getting compliments like that to make it into an experience for humility, because I hadn't built that level of character yet, right? So I took that and I let my head get big. I was like, you know what, you're right. I'm kind of, all right. You know what I mean? That's where I was, right? But see, life will always have a way of reminding you where you came from. And it always has a way of reminding you that you still got some work to do on yourself and you still have some character that you need to build. So, fast forward to 2013. I'm living in this nice house in suburban Connecticut. I'm commuting back and forth from Connecticut to New York. I'm working on these magazines. I'm on television. I'm doing all this stuff. And a few years before, my mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And she went into remission. We thought we were okay. She went, had her chemotherapy and her radiation. And I got a call one afternoon, morning, just after the 4th of July in 2013. My uncle said, you need to come home. I said, okay. What's going on? He said, well, your mom had to go to the hospital, this morning, you need to come home. And I said, all right. So I called her doctor before I made arrangements so I could figure out, when a person's sick, when somebody has an illness like cancer, you never know. Sometimes it could be real serious, or sometimes they could go to the hospital and only be there for a day. So I said, before I make plans, because I was working on a really, really big project, right? How many of y'all follow boxing? Anybody know about boxing? Anybody know who Floyd Mayweather is? Okay, so there was this issue of ESPN, the magazine that I created that was called The Fighting Issue. And I don't know what that was. It was called The Fighting Issue. And The Fighting Issue, the very first fighting issue that ESPN, the magazine did was my creation, and we did it when Floyd Mayweather fought, at that time, his biggest fight ever. He fought a Mexican superstar by the name of Canelo Alvarez. So I had writers, people who worked for the magazine, traveling all over the country, flying back and forth to Mexico to follow Canelo Alvarez, following Floyd Mayweather as he went to the jewelry store with millions of dollars to buy stuff that he didn't really need. And I'm in the middle of this project, and I get a call, said, you gotta come home. So I said, well, I need to check and see if everything's all right. So I called my mother's doctor. And the doctor said, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. You need to be prepared for the worst when you get home. And he was right. My mother lived 5 more days. Five more days. That was my heart, my strength. That was where I had gotten everything that I got to create the person that I had become. And I got 5 more days. That was it. And it didn't get easier. Thank you. It didn't get easier. See, you can be making a lot of progress and think that you're growing and that you're above difficulty, but you're not. You can think that just because everything is going well for you at that moment, that it's going to continue to go well for you. But the reality is that life can change on you in a dime, and what I thought at that point in time was about the worst possible thing that could have happened to me, losing my mother, which is something that, even though I knew she was sick, I couldn't really imagine what it would be like to live without her. And I thought that was the worst possible thing that could have happened to me. And I'm here to tell you that it got worse than even that. That was in July of 2013. By November of 2013, I had been informed that I was losing my job at ESPN. You go from being way up here and thinking that you have the world in your hands and you can do anything that you want to do, and that it's just that you're never going to come down from that, and then you come down, and then you way down here and you don't know what you're going to do. I was extremely depressed. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how to figure it out. I spent about 1.5 years doing television appearances all over the place, ESPN, CNN, well, not so much ESPN anymore, but CNN, MSNBC, even places overseas like Al Jazeera and the BBC over in London, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And everybody was looking at me and saying, man, this is great. You've gone from being this editor to being this big TV star, because people are calling me who I have friends over in London, and they're like, I just saw you on television in London. You must be doing great. I was miserable. Every single day. And eventually, I got tired, and I said, I can't keep doing this. So I got a phone call from a friend of mine. This is now early 2015. Somebody I knew. I won't use the word friend. I had a call, and she said, well, I had this job for you down here in Atlanta, and it's a little bit different, but you can come down here and you can be the deputy press secretary for the mayor of Atlanta. It's another big job. I can do it. It was very different from what I had been doing, but I could do it. Atlanta wasn't wasn't a bad place to go. So I said, all right, I'll do that. I moved to Atlanta. And I thought, once again, everything's great. What could be better, right? You live in Atlanta, you got a nice house, you still making money, you still have access, you still traveling, right? But I was miserable again. And, wasn't a very good place to work, didn't have real good experiences. And in another year and a half, I was looking for work again. So now I'm in Atlanta. This is the second time since 2013 that I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. I've lost my mother. I don't have a compass. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I moved back to Pittsburgh. And when I came back to Pittsburgh, I thought it was the worst thing in the world. If you, by show of hands, if you could do what I did, I know everybody threw their hands up when I said if you could get up and leave and go get any job you wanted to and make a lot of money, how many of y'all would do it, right? Okay, how many of y'all, after you had that experience, making, a big salary, traveling, doing whatever you wanted to do, how many of y'all would choose to move back to Pittsburgh? I see 2, 3 hands. I see a lot fewer hands than I saw a couple minutes ago. I thought that having to come back to Pittsburgh was like the worst thing in the world. I thought that having to come back, especially under the circumstances that I came back, was the worst thing in the world. See, I was used to coming home for a weekend, having a bunch of money in my pocket, being able to go out, see a couple people, get back out of town. Now I'm back here. I'm not partying. I spent all my money and paid for my mother's funeral, paid off my mother's house, literally sleeping in the bedroom that I grew up in. I'm grown, back sleeping in the bedroom in the house that I grew up in the same place that I had worked for 20 years to leave. It's a terrible feeling. But again, your preparation for the next opportunity kicks in. So I said, you know what? I had always had something in the back of my mind from when I started my early career, knowing that I wanted to learn about business. And I looked around the city and I saw today the city that we started talking about, where people are talking about Amazon and talking about tech companies and talking about Uber being here and all of those things. And I didn't used to feel like I was a part of that world. I didn't feel like that world connected to somebody like me because I was just this kid who used to run around Borough Street and who, used to play basketball down Westinghouse, and that was it, right? Now, after 20 years, I'm prepared to compete in that world. So I said, you know what? I see an opportunity for myself. And I took a risk by going to do something that I never thought that I would do because I had spent this entire career in media, in journalism. I said, you know what? I've always been interested in real estate, and I see a whole lot of people moving to the city, and that seems like an opportunity for me. So I made a decision on a Sunday. I had spent almost all the money that I had saved, which was a lot of money, and I had literally only, couple $1,000s left. And I took some of that money and I went to spend it so I could study to get a real estate license. And I took the real estate license, and I was nervous because I thought all my friends who know me as a sports journalist aren't going to respect me anymore because now I'm not on television every day. I thought I was going to lose something that I had. I was holding on to all of the old things because I was worried about what people would think. You moved back to Pittsburgh and you sell real estate. The last time I saw you, you was in New York leaving CNN in a chauffeur Mercedes-Benz taking you back to Connecticut. What's wrong with you? I was embarrassed to even be pursuing and trying to take a chance to do something different. Well, long story short, I did it anyway. I took the risk anyway. I took the classes anyway. I got the license anyway. I started going out around Pittsburgh, not telling anybody who I was, not saying, I used to be on CNN, I used to talk, I used to do this, that, and the third. Just going out on Sundays and sticking a little sign in front of a house that said open house and doing this, that, and the third, and not talking to people. People who in neighborhoods that I wouldn't even have gone to when I was younger because I thought we don't belong in that neighborhood, we don't go over there. And I discovered something that you find out when you spend a lot of time preparing yourself and you have educated yourself and you have some experience and you give yourself the chance to get that opportunity, that people will not only accept you, that they'll do business with you. That people who you didn't even think would ever talk to you will literally walk in off the street and write you checks. I mean, like, checks. I mean, like, $500,000 checks. I did in 1 month. You laughing, but I ain't playing. Because when you gotta call somebody and say, hey, we got a closing tomorrow, and this is literally the story of the first. I've been doing this for a couple of months, and I'm still nervous about it, and I still don't have all my bearings, and I'm still like, I ain't sure if I'm supposed to be doing this. I don't know, right? And you call somebody on the phone, and it's the first time that you're closing. When you buy a house, you go through this process called closing, where you got to sit down and sign all these papers and promise to pay the money back that you borrowed and all this stuff. And I had to call a guy, and I said, hey, our closing is this morning, and I just needed to make sure that you knew what you needed to bring. And he said, okay, well, what do I need to bring? And he said, I said, you need your ID, okay? You need all the documents that we've sent you. And the final thing that you need is you need a copy of what they call the hand money check. You need to bring that last check with you that covers the amount of money that you're, basically the money for your down payment on the house, so that it can be turned over from the buyer to the seller. And he said, okay. I said, and that has to be a certified check. So I'm calling you early so you can make sure you can go to the bank to get it. And he said, well, I saw the amount on the papers that you sent me over, but has that changed? And I said, no. He said, well, how much do I need to bring? I said, you need to bring me a check for $96,348.22. He said, okay. I was like, shit. All right, okay, because even in the world that I was operating in, the reality of being able to be in a position to say to somebody, you got to bring me a check for this amount of money, and they're like, all right, that's cool, like it was no big deal. And I said, okay, maybe this can work. So in a couple of months after having gone through so much, losing it, working as hard as I could to get out of a bad environment, taking myself from a bad environment to college, from college to my first job, from my first job to a big job, from a big job to somebody who tried to take that job away from me, and from that job to a bigger job, and then that job to a great job, to losing a parent, to losing one job, to losing another job, to losing money, to coming all the way back home to where I started and starting all over from nothing. I did in the month of December, $1.5 million in business in real estate in Pittsburgh. In a month. Your luck is when your preparation meets the opportunity that you have to give yourself and that you have to recognize every single day, no matter what. No matter how bad it is, no matter how hard it is, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how much you can't see it, no matter how much you can't imagine it, no matter how unrealistic it may feel, that's always going to be the case. It's always going to be the case. And if I can give you anything that you walk away with from here today, is that you have to carry that rule with you. You have to follow it. You have to breathe it. You have to know that as long as you are capable, as long as you have a brain, as long as you have some ability, as long as you can get up and fight no matter how little fight you have in you, You can make something happen for yourself from wherever you are. And with that, I'm going to step back and I'll take any questions that you may have. I thank you for listening to me. All right, somebody say something. Otherwise, I'm just stand here and drink water in front of y'all.